Hi everybody, in this video we will talk about how to use the differential scanning calorimeter, or the DSC. So first, when you walk up to it, if the instrument is off, then you have to do two things. One, turn it on, and two, turn on the gas tank. The power button is right back here, right above where the power cord goes into the instrument, so you flip that on, and then you turn on the gas tank right here. I just had it open, but if it wasn't just open, you'd hear it probably make a psh noise. And I forgot to include this in the count earlier. There's actually three things you have to turn on. Down here is the chiller, which allows this instrument to go below room temperature, and it has a power switch right here that you can turn on. Now, if the computer's not logged in, or you have to power it up, you can log in with the /faculty login. And the application you want is this DSC 204F1 that's over here on the top left. Okay, the software boots up. It asks you what state to put the instrument into when you begin. You can just click yes on this. And then to get a good view of what the instrument's doing, you can go into the diagnosis menus and select View Signals. And then it pops up this little box. The View Signals window tells you the state of the instrument, the temperature, the reading from the calorimeter itself. P1 is a gas line we don't use. P2 is the purge gas, line 2, which is the one we use. And PG is the protective gas, which you blow into the instrument so that you don't oxidize all the components while you heat the heck out of it. And all these values are fine for just starting up. And we want to let the instrument sit for about 20 to 30 minutes to let everything stabilize before we run. So that's the reason to turn it on now, and then we can go prep our samples while we're waiting for it to stabilize and get happy. Okay, to begin sample preparation, we need the items we have on the table here. And first, we're going to make the reference pan. DSC is differential scanning calorimetry, so it measures the difference between your sample and the reference. And so let's make the reference because it's empty. It's just an empty pan, and so it's a good one to practice and learn how to do this on. So in here, you have the most expensive cutting board you've ever used, and a little red tool that we're going to use for poking a hole in the lid. We need a hole in the lid so that we can heat the system without it exploding, because there's inevitably going to be some gas in our sample. And then for now, the crucibles, or the little aluminum pans, live in this box, although by the time you watch this video, maybe we've moved on to buying cheaper ones. These are the expensive ones that come with the instrument. So we just got the instrument when I'm recording this video, so we still have a full pan of the nice expensive ones, or a full box of the nice expensive ones, until I break the box. Okay. It's easiest to open the box holding it in the air, but then please set it down when you take the lid all the way off so that you don't send the crucibles flying. Alright, so we're going to need 3 crucibles eventually. Right now we'll just take out 1. Alright, here's the one we'll start with. I'll set the lid back on this and put it out to the side so I don't smash it. Okay, we're also going to need a lid. So using the ones that came with the instrument, they're in this box here. Again, this may be different by the time you use it. And there's 100 lids in this box, but it doesn't really look like 100 because they like to stick together. And so you have to make sure that you grab just one lid. All right, then I'm going to set this back in here so I don't drop it everywhere. Okay, now we can poke a hole in the lid. And so you grab the tool and try not to throw everything everywhere. And then it doesn't really matter where on the center, but just find a spot on the center and then push on it. And you'll feel your tool go through the lid. Perfect. Then you can pull the lid off and then put this tool away so you don't poke yourself with it. And now we have a lid with a hole. There it is. Okay, so now we're going to make this the reference pan. So we're going to put the pieces into our die. It's this piece. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that this piece, which does come out, you don't need to take it out, but since it comes out, you can get pushed back in here not perfectly level. So just make sure that it spins. You can kind of spin it like that, and that will indicate that it's in there nice, flat, and level. So then you grab your sample pan and kind of slide it down in there, and then with the side of the tweezers, you can kind of tap on it to make sure it's in there nice and flat as it's going to go. And then the lid goes on next, and these lids are designed that you can put them onto here either way. Since we're going to run with a small amount of sample, you can put them in here so that it seems like the lid goes into the crucible as opposed to sticking out of the crucible. And so you kind of gently set that on there, and then get your face into it and make sure that everything's lined up, and tap it with the side of the tweezers. And then you grab the knob up here and pull it down until it stops. And give it some force, but don't, Superman the thing. There's still a little bit of space here. It doesn't go all the way down. And then lift it back up. And so now your lid should be adhered to your crucible. And don't do this with your actual sample, but I'll do this with this one just to make sure I got it on here right. The lid doesn't shake off or anything. So great. So now we have the lid on our reference pan. Okay, now you need to weigh your reference pan that you just made. I suggest using the Sartorius balances that are in room 329, our normal lab room, alongside the windows there. These are the ones that are accurate down to 0.01 milligrams, and that extra accuracy is really important for what we're doing here with measuring such a tiny sample. And then something very important is you want to make sure you don't get this mixed up with your sample, otherwise you'll have weird data. So grab a Post-it note and write reference on the left, and then on the right side you'll have both a correction pan, which you run first, and then your sample pan, which you run second. And the left and right matters here because in the instrument, they're not labeled, but you need to put your reference pan on the left side, so that's why I write the Post-it note this way. So I'm going to take the Post-it note, put it on top of the instrument, and then set the reference pan just on the left side of it so I can keep them straight. Okay, next you'll do the same process over again to crimp another empty pan. This one will be your correction pan, which we run before we run the sample as kind of a background or a blank. So ultimately you'll have two empty pans. You need to know the mass of both of them. And great, so I've done that. I'm going to put this on top of the instrument next to my little Post-it note so I can keep it straight. And then we can move on to the sample. So I'm going to get out another crucible and lid. Crucible. Okay, the first thing you do is poke a hole in this lid also. You want to do that before weighing it, just so that if you happen to lose any mass when you do so, then that's accounted for when you weigh it. And then it's always good to make sure, maybe hold it up to the light or something, make sure that you actually made a hole through and not just a dent. So I held this up to the window and verified that the hole does indeed go all the way through. And then you take your crucible and your lid over for weighing. That was cute. I wrote it in the weigh boat. Please write it in your lab notebook. That here's the empty mass. Okay, and now we can go about putting our sample in. Okay, put your sample in so that it covers the bottom. And this is going to take some care. Made a little bit of a mess, but I'm going to clean that up later. Now, in the one of the sample prep kits, there's this little tool. So this tool allows us to tamp the sample down to the bottom of the pan so that there will be better heat transfer in and out of the sample right next to where the thermocouple is, which is right underneath the pan. And If it's not tamped, then there'll be a bunch of air there. So use the 4.6 side and kind of somewhat gently tamp all of your sample down to the bottom. And then get a Kim wipe or something and make sure you wipe this off before you put it back. One other thing I'm going to do is very, very gently try to brush off any polymer sample that is on the edge here, because I don't want to get it crimped into the seal. Don't think it would affect the seal, but it might affect the thermal transfer in and out for when we're doing the measurement. Okay, then bring your crucible over to the die and very gently put it in there. Don't miss, don't miss. There you go. Tap it in with the tweezers. Take your lid and put it with the kind of pointy side down to make less volume inside. And if that doesn't fit, then put it the other way. But it should fit to put it in here with the pointed side down. Tap it with the tweezers to make sure that everything's flat. And then I'm getting a good look at it to make sure that the lid lines up on top of the crucible. And then I'm pulling the lever down, push it down until it stops, lift it back up, and then here's our sample. Now I don't want to drop this all around and flop it just to show myself that the lid is sealed, because I don't want to disturb the powder that I just tamped down to the bottom. Okay, now that you've made your sample, you need to go weigh it full so that you can determine how much powder you actually put in there. And so I'm going to go do that. And then also wipe this up, brush this stuff into the trash can. That's where it can go. It's just nylon, it can go in the trash. And again, use the Sartorius balances next to the windows. And here's my mass for the full crucible. And write it in your notebook. Don't write it on the weighboat unless you're making a video. And so I'm going to put our sample on the post-it note on top of the instrument that says sample. Okay, now we're back to the instrument, and we need to open up the furnace. And so this instrument has a two-handed open. So there's an open button right over here that you have to push at the same time as you push this button on the right bottom side here. So if you push and hold both of them, then the lid to the furnace will open up and retract off to the left side. Okay, now that we've done that, let's take a closer look at the furnace. So the reference is on the left, the sample is on the right. The two buttons on either side that kind of look like eyeballs are the where the sample pans go. Now, as you heat this and cool this and heat this and cool this, there's some oxidation that occurs on the surface of the thermocouples where the samples go and the reference goes. So we want to clean that off. So either sitting on the instrument or in one of the kits is a brush like this. And with this brush, there's little bristles in the end. And so we rotate the right side of the brush to get the bristles to poke out. So now the bristles poke out a little bit. And then we're going to just kind of gently, going the same direction, just wipe the surface of this until it starts looking nice and shiny. That doesn't feel very good. I'm going to get a little more brush here. It still has a pretty wiry feeling. Getting somewhere. Okay, so that looks now more shiny. So then you can take a can of compressed air and blow out the little dust bits. And probably a little hard to tell with the video, but one side is kind of bright and shiny and metallic looking, and the other side is not. So now I'm going to do the same thing to the other side in order to get this cleaned off and looking the same. Okay, so when you're done and they both look shiny, twist the bristles back into the brush and put it back in its little case if it's the one that came in the case. And then again, take the compressed air and blow out any dust that's inside. This time I'll use the little stick. Okay. Okay, now we're going to put our correction sample and our reference in. So the reference goes in and stays in for both experiments. The correction is what we run first. It's like a blank or a background scan, and then we'll take that out and put the sample in. So I'll grab the reference pan using these tweezers. They seem to work pretty well. And you grab it just like a crane. Reach down, pick that up, and then put it into the furnace. And your goal is to get this perfectly centered onto the little dot here. And it's worth your time to lift this up and down a few times and make sure that you get it perfectly centered. All right. There we go. And we'll put the correction pan in on the other side. And again, make sure this is perfectly centered on here. And once you do that, you can close the lid of the furnace, which, like opening it, is a two-handed procedure. You push the button on the side and the close button at the same time, and hold it while the lid of the furnace moves. And then pick up your stuff a little bit, and that's it for getting your measurement ready to go. Now for the next steps of how to make the experiment run through the computer, either see a subsequent video that I might make or the written directions for how to get that going. All right, thanks for watching.